In a small town named Pineville, there lived a man named Tom. Tom was an ordinary man with simple dreams. He worked at a local grocery store and saved his money carefully. He never thought he could own something big or special, but deep inside, he wanted a quiet place where he could rest and feel free from the busy world. One day, while walking through the town square, Tom noticed a small, old notice pinned to a wooden board. It was an auction list. The town was selling some old properties that no one wanted anymore. Most people ignored the list, but Tom's eyes stopped at one line: small cabin starting bid, 25 cents. Tom was surprised. Only 25 cents, he thought. The cabin was an old, tiny building on the edge of the forest, forgotten for many years. Nobody cared about it because it was small and needed a lot of work. But for Tom, it was a chance. Maybe this little cabin could be his dream place. That night, Tom could not sleep. He kept thinking about the cabin and what he could do with it. His friends laughed when he told them. "Why spend your money on an old cabin? It's nothing but a broken building," they said. But Tom felt something else. He felt hope. The next day, Tom went to the town hall for the auction. There were many people there, but no one was interested in the cabin. When the auctioneer asked for bids, Tom raised his hand and said, "I bid 25 cents. The room was silent. No one else raised their hand. The auctioneer smiled and said, "Sold. To Tom, for 25 cents. Tom felt a little embarrassed but also excited. He had bought the cabin. When Tom first went to see the cabin, it was much worse than he expected. The roof was broken, the windows were cracked, and the door hung on one hinge. The inside was dusty and dark. But Tom saw the beauty beneath the dirt. He saw a place full of stories, full of life waiting to happen. Tom promised himself he would fix the cabin. He started by cleaning the inside, throwing away old broken things, and fixing the door. Every day after work, Tom would go to the cabin. Sometimes he felt tired and wanted to give up, but he remembered why he started. Slowly, the cabin began to change. Tom painted the walls white, fixed the roof, and even planted flowers around the house. Sometimes, animals from the forest came close to the cabin: a rabbit, a deer, or a small bird. Tom loved these quiet moments. As weeks passed, Tom's dream grew bigger. He imagined sitting on the porch, reading books, and watching the sun set behind the trees. The cabin was becoming his special place, far away from noise and stress. One evening, while sitting on the porch, Tom met a woman named Mary. She lived nearby and often walked her dog in the forest. They talked about the cabin, the town, and their dreams. Mary admired Tom's hard work and determination. She told him, "You have done something wonderful here. This cabin is alive because of you." Tom felt happy. He realized that the cabin was not just a building, it was a part of him now. It was a symbol of hope and new beginnings. But life was about to change. One morning, when Tom went to the cabin, he found a letter on the door. The letter was from the Homeowners Association, a group that controlled many properties in Pineville. The letter said that the cabin was part of the community, and Tom did not have the right to own it. They claimed the cabin belonged to the HOA. Tom's heart sank. How could this be? He had bought the cabin fair and square. He had spent his time and money to make it a home. The letter said he must leave immediately. Tom felt confused and scared. He did not know what to do. The cabin was his dream, and now someone else was trying to take it away. He decided to visit the HOA office to ask for answers. The office was in a big building in the center of town. The woman at the front desk listened to Tom but said she could not help him directly. She told him to wait for a letter with more information. Days went by, and Tom felt more worried. He could not sleep. He kept thinking about losing the cabin and what would happen to his dream. The cabin had become his safe place, and the thought of losing it made his heart ache. One afternoon, Mary came to visit. She saw the sadness in Tom's eyes and said, "Don't give up. Sometimes, life gives us problems to make us stronger. You fought for this cabin once, and you can fight again." Her words gave Tom a little hope. He decided to learn more about the law and his rights. He started to read books and talk to people who knew about property rules. Tom realized that this fight would not be easy, but he was not alone. The cabin was more than just wood and nails. It was a dream, a hope, and a symbol of courage. Tom was ready to protect it no matter what. After Mary's visit, Tom felt a little stronger. The weight of the letter from the Homeowners Association still pressed on his heart, but now he had hope and a plan. He decided not to let fear control him. Instead, he would fight for the cabin that meant so much to him. The next morning, Tom woke up early. He packed a small bag and set off to visit the town library. Tom was not used to reading many books, but now he needed to learn everything about property laws, ownership, and his rights. He wanted to understand why the HOA was claiming the cabin and if he could prove it belonged to him. At the library, Tom found some old books about land and property rules. He read for hours, taking notes in a small notebook. The words were sometimes difficult, but Tom did not give up. Every new fact he learned made him feel a little more confident. He discovered that many people had lost their homes because they did not know the laws. Tom didn't want that to happen to him. He wanted to protect his dream. After days of reading and asking questions, Tom decided to visit the local lawyer's office. He had never been to a lawyer before and was a little nervous, but he knew he needed help. The lawyer was a kind man named Mr. Green. When Tom explained his situation, Mr. Green listened carefully. "You bought the cabin at a public auction, right?" Mr. Green asked. Tom nodded. "That means you have legal ownership, but it depends on the documents you received when you bought the cabin," Mr. Green explained. He told Tom that sometimes homeowners associations make mistakes or try to control properties that do not belong to them. Mr. Green promised to help Tom look into the papers and see what could be done. He said, "We will fight for your right to keep the cabin." Tom left the lawyer's office feeling a little lighter. He knew the road ahead would be hard, but for the first time, he felt like he had an ally. Back at the cabin, Tom worked harder than ever. Every morning, he fixed one small thing: a broken window, a loose step, a garden flower. The cabin was becoming stronger, and so was Tom's hope. Mary often visited to bring him food or just to talk. She believed in Tom's dream, and her friendship gave him comfort. "You have turned this old cabin into something beautiful," she said one afternoon. "No one can take that away from you." Tom smiled but also felt the fear deep inside. He knew the HOA was powerful. They had many rules and lawyers. But Tom had something they did not: heart. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, Tom sat on the porch, looking at the cabin he had saved from ruin. He thought about the past year, how he had bought the cabin for just 25 cents and turned it into a home. It was a small miracle. Suddenly, a car stopped near the cabin. Two men from the HOA stepped out. Tom's heart raced. They walked up to him and said, "We need to talk." Tom invited them inside. The men showed him papers that said the cabin was on land that belonged to the HOA and that Tom had no right to live there. They asked him to leave by the end of the month. Tom looked at the papers and then at the cabin he loved. He felt anger and sadness, but he also felt something stronger: determination. "No," Tom said quietly but firmly. "This cabin is mine. I bought it fair and square. I will not leave." The men warned him, "This will not be easy, Tom. The HOA has many resources." Tom nodded. "Maybe, but I have something else. I have worked hard, and this cabin is my home." The men left, but their visit made Tom's fight very real. He knew he needed to prepare for a long battle. The days that followed were busy and stressful. Tom worked with Mr. Green to gather all the papers, bills, and photos showing he owned the cabin. He even talked to neighbors who saw him working on the cabin and could help prove it was his. Mary helped too. She used her phone to take pictures of the cabin and posted stories on social media about Tom's fight. Soon, many people from Pineville started supporting him. They liked the idea of a man who bought a tiny cabin for almost nothing and made it a home. One afternoon, Tom received a call from the local newspaper. A reporter wanted to tell Tom's story to the town. Tom agreed, hoping it would bring more attention to his situation. The article was published the next day. It told the story of Tom's 25-cent cabin and the fight with the HOA. Many people read it and sent messages of support. Some even offered to help with repairs or legal advice. Tom felt grateful but also overwhelmed. The cabin was no longer just his dream, it had become a symbol for many people who believed in hope and hard work. But the HOA did not give up. They sent more letters and even a lawyer to talk to Tom. Each time, Tom stayed strong. He knew this fight was not just for the cabin but for the future he believed in. One night, as Tom sat by the fire inside the cabin, he looked around at the small space filled with memories. The scratches on the wooden floor, the flowers by the window, the old chair where Mary sat, all these things told a story of hope and courage. Tom smiled and whispered to himself, "No matter what happens, this cabin is my dream. And I will fight for it with all my heart." The sun rose gently over Pineville, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and orange. Tom stood on the small porch of his cabin, breathing in the fresh morning air. Despite the heavy clouds of worry hanging over him, moments like this made everything feel right. Here, surrounded by tall trees and the quiet songs of birds, he found peace. The past few weeks had been difficult. The letters from the Homeowners Association arrived almost every day, each one a reminder that the fight wasn't over. But Tom refused to let fear take over his heart. Instead, he focused on the small joys that made the cabin feel like home. He spent mornings tending to the garden. The flowers he had planted started to bloom: bright yellow daisies, soft purple lavender, and tiny white baby's breath. Each flower was a symbol of his hope and hard work. He loved watching the bees visit the blossoms, their tiny wings buzzing as they carried pollen from one flower to another. One day, as Tom worked in the garden, Mary came by with her dog, Buddy. Buddy was a friendly golden retriever who loved to chase butterflies. Mary smiled warmly at Tom. "The garden looks beautiful," she said. Tom wiped sweat from his forehead. "Thanks, Mary. It's my way of fighting back. When things get hard, I come out here and work. It helps me remember why I started." Mary nodded. "That's important. Holding on to hope, even when the world seems against you." They talked about the future, what might happen with the cabin, and how Tom hoped to make it a place where people could visit and find peace like he did. Mary suggested they hold small gatherings on the weekends, maybe a book club or a nature walk. Tom loved the idea. The cabin was no longer just a place for him, it was becoming a part of the community. But not all moments were easy. One afternoon, while Tom was fixing a loose step on the porch, he heard the sharp sound of car brakes. Looking up, he saw a group of people in suits, members of the HOA. Their faces were serious, their eyes cold. Tom's heart clenched. "Tom," one of the men said, "we're here to discuss your eviction." Tom took a deep breath and stood tall. "I've already told you. This cabin is mine. I won't leave." The men handed him another letter, this one more official, warning of legal action if he did not comply. Tom felt the weight of the papers in his hand but refused to show fear. After they left, Tom sat on the porch and looked at the cabin. It was more than wood and nails, it was his dream, his hope, and his home. He touched the rough wooden railing and whispered, "I won't give up." Days turned into weeks. Tom spent his evenings researching, writing letters, and meeting with Mr. Green, the lawyer. They planned their next steps carefully. Every phone call, every paper signed, brought Tom closer to understanding the fight ahead. Despite the stress, Tom found comfort in small, everyday moments. He cooked simple meals inside the cabin: rice and beans, fresh vegetables from the market, and sometimes, a sweet treat Mary brought. He listened to old songs on a small radio and read books borrowed from the library. One evening, Tom sat by the window, watching the stars appear in the dark sky. He thought about the journey he had been on, from buying the cabin for just 25 cents to standing up to powerful people. It was a journey of courage and belief. Mary visited again and sat beside him. "You inspire me, Tom," she said softly. "You remind me that dreams matter, no matter how small they seem." Tom smiled. "I never thought I'd own a place like this. Now, it's everything to me." Their friendship grew stronger with each visit. Mary helped Tom organize community support, and together they planned a small gathering at the cabin. The idea was to show the town how much the cabin meant to many people. The day of the gathering arrived. Tom was nervous but excited. He cleaned the cabin from top to bottom and arranged chairs on the porch. Mary baked cookies and made lemonade. Slowly, neighbors began to arrive, old and young, families and friends. Some had heard about Tom's story from the newspaper, others from social media. Tom welcomed each guest with a warm smile. The air was filled with laughter and stories. People admired the flowers, the repaired roof, and the cozy inside of the cabin. Many thanked Tom for fighting to keep the place alive. As the sun set, Tom stood at the edge of the porch and looked at the crowd. His heart swelled with happiness. This was more than he had ever hoped for. The cabin was no longer just his dream, it was a symbol of hope for the whole town. But deep down, Tom knew the fight with the HOA was not over. The letters and threats might return. Still, tonight, surrounded by friends, he felt stronger. The next morning, Tom woke up with a new sense of purpose. He knew the path ahead would be hard, but he was ready to face it. With Mary by his side and the community behind him, Tom believed in a future where the cabin would stand tall, a beacon of courage and hope. As he stepped outside, Tom took a deep breath and smiled at the rising sun. The journey was just beginning. The early morning sun spilled golden light over Pineville, but Tom's heart felt heavy. Just days after the warm gathering at the cabin, a new letter arrived, this time with a stern warning from the HOA. It said the legal battle was going to begin, and Tom needed to prepare. The words were sharp, cold, and full of power. Tom read them slowly, feeling the weight of each line. He folded the letter carefully and placed it on the small wooden table inside the cabin. For a moment, the peace he had found in the cabin seemed to slip away. The fight he had hoped to avoid was now unavoidable. The homeowners association was serious, and they had lawyers ready to challenge him. Tom looked around the cabin, the place he had built with his own hands, the place where he found comfort during lonely nights. He could almost hear the walls whispering stories of hope and courage. But now, those walls seemed fragile, like they might crumble under the pressure. Mary noticed the change in Tom when she came to visit. His usual bright eyes were clouded with worry. She sat beside him on the porch and gently asked, "What's wrong, Tom?" Tom sighed deeply. "The HOA isn't going to give up. They're starting a legal fight. It might take everything I have, and I don't know if I can win." Mary took his hand and smiled softly. "You're not alone. We'll face this together." Her words brought a small warmth to Tom's heart. He knew that even in the darkest moments, friendship could be a light. Tom met with Mr. Green, the lawyer, to discuss the next steps. Mr. Green explained that the HOA might try to prove the land was theirs before the auction, or that the sale was invalid. They would argue in court, and Tom would need strong evidence. "I'll help you collect everything we have," Mr. Green said. "But it's important to prepare for a long fight." The thought of court made Tom nervous. He was a simple man, not used to fighting in big buildings with many people and loud voices. But he also knew he had to be brave. While waiting for the case to begin, Tom tried to focus on the cabin. He repaired the broken fence and added new flower pots by the windows. Sometimes, he would sit quietly, listening to the wind rustle through the trees, and watch the sun slowly set behind the hills. One afternoon, as Tom worked on the garden, a group of strangers came near the cabin. They wore dark suits and carried clipboards. Tom recognized them as part of the HOA's team. Their presence made him uneasy. "Can we talk?" one man asked politely. Tom nodded and invited them to sit on the porch. The man explained they wanted to inspect the property as part of the legal process. Tom agreed, but inside, he felt a strange mix of fear and anger. The men looked around carefully, taking notes and pictures. Tom watched them silently. He felt protective of the cabin, like it was a living thing he needed to defend. After they left, Tom locked the door and sat down, feeling tired but determined. The cabin was his dream, and no matter what, he would protect it. That night, Tom couldn't sleep. His mind raced with worries about the legal fight and what might happen if he lost. He thought about his life before the cabin, working at the grocery store, saving money, and dreaming of something more. He realized the cabin was more than just a home. It was a symbol of his hope and hard work. Giving it up would feel like losing a part of himself. The next morning, Tom received a call from Mary. She told him that the community was organizing a meeting to support him. Many people wanted to stand by his side, and some local businesses even offered to help with legal fees. Tom felt grateful. He never expected so many people to care about the cabin. Their support gave him strength. At the meeting, neighbors shared stories of how Tom's cabin had inspired them. A woman said it reminded her to keep dreaming even in hard times. A young boy said he wanted to build something with his own hands one day, just like Tom. Tom listened quietly, touched by their words. The cabin was no longer just his, it belonged to the whole town in a way. But even with support, the battle was tough. The HOA sent more letters and made the legal process slow and difficult. Tom had to spend many hours at the lawyer's office, signing papers and learning about court rules. One day, Tom visited the county office to check the property records. He hoped to find something that could help his case. After hours of searching, he found an old document showing that the land where the cabin stood had been sold to the town many years ago, and then auctioned publicly. This was good news. It proved that Tom's purchase was legal. He shared the document with Mr. Green, who smiled. "This could help us a lot." Despite this hope, the HOA's lawyers continued to challenge the claim. Tom knew the fight was far from over. On a cold winter morning, Tom walked to the cabin with a heavy heart. The trees were bare, and snow covered the ground. The cabin looked quiet and peaceful, but Tom felt the storm inside him. He sat on the porch and thought about the journey. From buying the cabin for 25 cents, to building a home, making friends, and now fighting for his right to stay. The cabin was small, but its meaning was big. It stood for hope, courage, and dreams that refused to die. Tom whispered to the wind, "I will not let you take this away." And deep inside, he believed those words. The cold wind blew through the trees surrounding Tom's cabin, shaking the branches like a warning. Winter had settled over Pineville, covering the ground with a soft blanket of snow. Inside the cabin, Tom sat by the small fireplace, the flickering flames casting warm shadows on the wooden walls. Yet, even in this quiet moment, his mind was restless. The fight with the Homeowners Association was no longer just about the cabin, it was about standing up for what was right. Tom had worked hard, sacrificed much, and built a life around this tiny, forgotten place. Losing it now would feel like losing a part of his soul. That morning, Mr. Green had called with news. The HOA was pushing for a court hearing much sooner than expected. The fight was about to become more serious. Tom took a deep breath. "I'm ready," he said quietly. The day of the hearing arrived fast. Tom stood outside the courthouse, his hands trembling slightly. He wore his best jacket and held a small briefcase with all the papers and documents he and Mr. Green had prepared. Mary was there too, her eyes full of support. "Remember, Tom," she said, "you're not alone. We're all with you." Tom smiled, grateful for her words. Together, they walked into the courthouse, feeling the weight of the moment. Inside the courtroom, the air was tense. The HOA's lawyers were confident, their voices clear and firm as they spoke. They argued that the cabin was part of the community's land and that Tom's purchase was invalid. They had documents and plans, and their case seemed strong. But when Mr. Green stood up, he presented the old property documents Tom had found. The papers showed that the land had been publicly auctioned, and the cabin legally belonged to Tom. Mr. Green explained how the HOA had no right to claim ownership. The judge listened carefully, asking questions and reviewing the evidence. Tom watched, heart pounding, hoping that justice would be on his side. During breaks, Tom met neighbors who had come to support him. Many told stories about how the cabin inspired them, how Tom's hard work gave them hope. Their words gave Tom courage to keep going. After several hours, the hearing ended. The judge said she would review everything and announce her decision soon. Tom left the courthouse feeling tired but hopeful. Days passed slowly. Tom returned to his cabin, trying to focus on repairs and small projects. But the waiting was difficult. Every sound outside made him wonder if the HOA would try to take the cabin by force. One evening, Mary brought dinner and sat with Tom by the fire. "No matter what happens," she said, "you've already won in many ways. You've shown what it means to fight for your dreams." Tom nodded. "I just want to protect this place. It's more than a cabin, it's my home." The night was quiet, but Tom's heart was full of both fear and hope. Finally, the letter arrived from the court. Tom's hands shook as he opened it. The judge had made her decision. The cabin legally belonged to Tom. The HOA had no right to claim it. Tears filled Tom's eyes. After months of struggle, the fight was over. He had won. Word spread quickly through Pineville. Neighbors came to congratulate Tom. The small cabin that once seemed forgotten had become a symbol of courage and determination. Tom stood on the porch, looking out at the trees. The snow sparkled in the sunlight, and for the first time in a long while, he felt at peace. The journey had been hard, but it had taught Tom many things, about hope, strength, and the power of community. Mary joined him, smiling. "You did it, Tom. You kept your dream alive." Tom looked at the cabin, the flowers by the windows, and the repaired roof. "This place is more than just a cabin," he said. "It's a reminder that no matter how small we start, we can protect what matters." As the days grew warmer, Tom invited neighbors to visit the cabin again. Together, they planned to make it a special place, a place for stories, gatherings, and dreams. Tom's small cabin, bought for 25 cents, had become a treasure worth far more than money. It was a home filled with hope, love, and the courage to never give up. Spring arrived in Pineville with gentle rains and fresh green leaves on the trees. The air smelled of new life and hope. Tom stood outside his cabin, watching as the garden he had tended through winter began to bloom with color. Bright tulips, soft daisies, and fresh grass made the small space feel alive again. The long battle with the Homeowners Association was finally over, and the court's decision gave Tom a new sense of freedom. The cabin was officially his, and the worry that had clouded his days lifted like morning fog. But Tom knew this was just the start of something new. He wanted to turn the cabin into more than a home. He dreamed of a place where the community could gather, where stories could be shared, and where people could find peace like he had. With Mary's help, Tom began planning events for the summer. They thought of simple things: book readings on the porch, outdoor picnics, and nature walks through the nearby woods. The cabin was small, but the dreams around it were big. Tom worked hard each day to improve the cabin and the land around it. He repaired the fence, planted more flowers, and built a small bench on the porch. He wanted the cabin to be welcoming and warm for anyone who came. Mary often visited to help and bring fresh ideas. She brought books for the book club and asked local musicians if they wanted to play at a summer gathering. Her friendship was a bright light in Tom's life, and he felt lucky to have her by his side. One morning, as Tom was planting seeds in the garden, a young boy walked up the path. His name was Sam, and he lived nearby. "Hi, Mr. Tom," Sam said shyly. "My mom told me about your cabin. Can I help you with the garden?" Tom smiled. "Of course, Sam. I'd be happy to have your help." Together, they planted rows of sunflowers and carrots. Tom taught Sam how to dig small holes and place the seeds gently. Sam's laughter filled the air, and for the first time in many months, Tom felt pure happiness. Word about the cabin and its new purpose spread throughout the town. Families came to visit, neighbors stopped by to chat, and friends brought homemade food for small gatherings. One sunny afternoon, Tom and Mary organized the first official event, a picnic on the cabin's small lawn. People brought blankets, sandwiches, and stories to share. Children ran and played, while adults talked quietly under the shade of the trees. Tom stood at the edge of the gathering, watching the joy and connection growing around his cabin. It was more than he had hoped for. During the picnic, Mary handed Tom a small envelope. "Open this," she said with a smile. Inside was a letter from the mayor of Pineville. The letter thanked Tom for his courage and dedication to the community and invited him to speak at the upcoming town meeting about his journey. Tom felt nervous but proud. He realized his story had become important to many people, not just about a cabin, but about hope, perseverance, and community spirit. At the town meeting, Tom stood before the crowd. His voice was calm but strong as he told the story of the 25-cent cabin, the fight with the HOA, and the dreams he had for the future. People listened closely, some nodding and others smiling. When he finished, the room filled with applause. Tom felt a warm glow inside. This was more than he had imagined. As the seasons changed, the cabin became a place of laughter, learning, and love. Tom and Mary worked together to keep it alive, inviting everyone to be part of the story. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Tom sat on the porch with Mary and Sam. They talked about the future, the plans for new gardens, and ways to help more people find their own dreams. Tom looked around the blooming flowers, the happy faces, and the small cabin that had once been forgotten. He realized that sometimes, the smallest things can become the greatest treasures. The cabin was more than wood and nails. It was a symbol of hope, community, and the power of never giving up. Tom smiled and whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." Summer had fully arrived in Pineville, wrapping the town in warm sunshine and gentle breezes. The little cabin that Tom had bought for just 25 cents was now a shining place of life and laughter. The garden was full of colorful flowers, and the porch often buzzed with visitors, neighbors, friends, and families who had come to share stories and dreams. Tom looked out at the small crowd gathered for today's event. It was the biggest one yet, a celebration of the cabin's new life and all the hope it had brought to the community. Children ran around playing, while adults chatted and enjoyed the fresh lemonade and homemade cookies Mary had helped prepare. Tom's heart swelled with pride. This cabin was no longer just his. It had become a symbol, a sign that even small things could grow into something powerful and beautiful. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the trees, Tom stepped onto the porch to speak. The crowd quieted, turning their attention to him. He smiled and began, "When I bought this cabin for 25 cents, I never imagined it would become this. At first, it was just a small, forgotten place. But with hard work, hope, and the support of many kind people, it has become a home not just for me, but for all of us." Tom paused, looking out at the faces in front of him. "This cabin taught me many things. It taught me to never give up, even when the world seems against you. It taught me that community is stronger than any challenge. And it taught me that dreams, no matter how small, are worth fighting for." The crowd clapped softly, some wiping tears from their eyes. Mary stood beside Tom, her smile warm and proud. She whispered, "You've done more than protect a cabin. You've inspired us all." After the speech, the celebration continued with music, laughter, and shared stories around the fire. Tom watched as neighbors and friends came together, connected by the story of the little cabin. In the following weeks, the cabin became a place of learning and kindness. Tom started a small workshop where children could learn about gardening and woodworking. Mary organized a reading group for adults who wanted to share books and ideas. Even the local school began bringing students on field trips to the cabin, teaching them about courage, community, and the power of hope. One quiet evening, after a long day, Tom sat on the porch alone, watching the stars twinkle above. He thought about the journey from buying a forgotten cabin for just 25 cents, to fighting for his right to keep it, to turning it into a place that meant so much to so many. He smiled softly. The cabin was small, but its story was big. It was a reminder that sometimes, the greatest things start from the smallest beginnings. Tom felt grateful for every step of the journey, the challenges, the friendships, and the victories. He knew the cabin would continue to stand, a home for dreams and hope for years to come. As he looked up at the night sky, Tom whispered a quiet promise to himself: I will protect this place, not just for me, but for everyone who believes in hope and the power of never giving up. The little cabin, once bought for just 25 cents, was now a treasure worth more than money. It was a legacy of courage, community, and the beautiful strength of a dream that refused to die. And in Pineville, that legacy would live on forever.